Welcome to this chess endgame review of the critical diagonal. And before I begin, I would like to mention that the upcoming 150th video is approaching for this channel. And I would like to thank all viewers and subscribers and remind you to leave comments and vote on who you think is the greatest chess player of all time. And then for that 150th video, I will do a game review of whoever you vote as the greatest chess player of all time. And now let's get back to this chess endgame review of the critical diagonal. A critical diagonal can occur in the endgame when there is a race to promote a pawn and the opposing king is trying to get to that pawn and stop it before it promotes. And so if we look in this position with white to move, before I turn on the analysis and the computer evaluation, take a look at this position and see if you can figure out with white to move what you would do in this position and how you would proceed to try and get your pawn, this white pawn, to promote. And so now I'll turn on the analysis and we'll see what white should do in this position. All right, and the evaluation shows that white is winning here, and here are the best lines. So in this position, if you try to immediately move your pawn forward, that will not work, as a4 here we see will lead to a draw, because once this pawn moves here to a4, the king will be able to jump in to the square of the pawn, which I covered in a previous video. And the square of the pawn is just a way to tell if you can stop a pawn from a distance. So once this pawn is on a4, it creates a square from the a4 square diagonally up to the edge of the board to e8, and then down to where this king is on e4. So the square is a4 to e4 to e8 to a8. And if the opposing king is able to enter that square, which he just has, then he'll be able to stop this pawn. And so if we played it out, you'll see the square gets smaller and the king jumps in that square. And as it gets smaller, the king is able to stay in that square. And then here we see that the pawn would promote, but the king would be able to stop it. And in this position with 2 pawns to 1, black should win this game. And so if we go back and we see what white should do using the theme of the critical diagonal, we see that here, let me go back to the beginning. So in this position with the critical diagonal, we see that this diagonal here from f3 up to the queening square on a8 is the critical diagonal that must be blocked. And so the best move here is d5. And so in this position, black must capture this pawn. If he does not, then the pawn here on the d file will promote up to d8. So once this pawn is captured, we see now that white is winning, as after a4, we have the king trying to get to that pawn, but now his own pawn has blocked him on this critical diagonal. And so if we play it out further, we have a5, the king moves up, and he will not be able to make it to that pawn in time, as we see here, and white will win from that position. And if you ask yourself, well, does he have another option? Well, we see by the computer evaluation that nothing else works either, so white would just win this position. Even if he tried, instead of moving his king up to e4, if instead he tried to move his pawn, well, that doesn't work either, as white just tries to promote his pawn. And if black brings his pawn down, white's king can just stop it. And now it is too late for this king to make it up here to stop the pawn. And this pawn cannot move forward. And another option would be if black instead tries to bring this pawn down, but we see that the queen, white would make a queen first, and that queen would be able to stop this pawn. So after f2, the queen could just move to f8 and stop this pawn from being able to promote here on f1. And so back to the beginning of this position, we see as a review here, the critical diagonal plays a vital role in whether or not the opposing king can stop that pawn from promoting. So if the pawn would have just moved forward, the black king would be able to get into the square of the pawn and stop this pawn. But once this d5 move was played, that blocks this diagonal towards the queening square, allowing white time to win by promoting his pawn. And so this critical diagonal may come up in your games, especially in the endgame when you're trying to decide whether or not you can promote a pawn or stop your opponent's pawn that is trying to promote. And so I hope this chess endgame review of the critical diagonal has helped you and given you a little bit of extra knowledge to use in your own games. Thank you. If you like this video, please like and subscribe, and feel free to leave comments and suggestions. And also remember to leave comments for your vote for the greatest chess player of all time, which I will feature in the 150th video for this channel that is coming up here shortly. So thank you and have a great day.